It's Evo 2004. Two of the best Street Fighter players in the world are facing off for the first time. It's the third round of the Third Strike tournament battle. Each had a round in the bag, so they were just down to the tiebreaker. Daigo Umehara had one sliver of health remaining. A single hit from Justin Wong would ensure his defeat. There were only 26 seconds left in the match. What happened next would become one of the most iconic moments in video game history, Evo Moment 37. But was it really a superhuman feat of reflexes? Welcome to Game Arcadia, the peak of gaming culture. I'm Jenna Stieber, and I'm unearthing the weirdest behaviors in video game communities. Why me? Well, I have a master's degree in media and culture, and I love my powerful girlfriend Chun-Li, which makes me the Oracle. The original Street Fighter III was only a moderate success when it was released in 1997. The 2D animations were considered outdated in the burgeoning era of 3D graphics. Despite the introduction of a parry mechanic, the gameplay was considered nothing new. After the wild success of Street Fighter II, it was kind of a letdown. That reputation began to turn around with the follow-ups Second Impact in 1997 and Third Strike in 1999. These updated versions had fine-tuned controls and added in legacy characters like my powerful girlfriend Chun-Li. Third Strike was regarded as the best in the SF3 line, but it still wasn't very well loved. It might as well have been called Street Fighter III Third Rate. Capcom producer Seth Killian says early Third Strike matches were boring to watch because everybody in a local scene adopted similar strategies, and that didn't include parrying. Critics dismissed it as easy to understand but difficult to master. It was such a new mechanic that players didn't appreciate what it could offer. So in the late 90s, nobody liked Third Strike and nobody liked parrying. That all changed thanks to the Battle by the Bay. The Battle by the Bay was a fighting game competition that focused predominantly on Street Fighter. The first version, called B3 after Battle by and Bay, crammed 128 people into a single arcade. The following iteration was bafflingly named B4, presumably for Battle by the Bay. Champions from B4 were flown to Japan to participate in a Japan vs. America exhibition. The fighting game scene in Japan was way more robust and better respected than in America, and their players were considered the best in the world. This cultural exchange continued in 2001 at B5, which probably stood for the Battle by the Bay, baby. There was a notable uptick in international players, particularly from Japan. They brought new styles and strategies, challenging the status quo in the local American fighting scene. Justin Wong was just 15 years old when he flew from his quaint hometown of New York City to compete for the first time in B5. He became the champion of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 using a team of Storm, Sentinel, and Cammy, an absolute nightmare blunt rotation.
Gotta get rough.
In 2002, the Battle by the Bay was renamed Evolution Championship Series, shortened to EVO. That's the EVO part of Evo Moment 37. More Japanese players competed than ever, even sweeping whole brackets. Wong once again took first place in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but struggled in a Japan vs. America Third Strike match. Riveting stuff. Seeing how the Japanese players used Third Strike's tech made American players reevaluate the game's complexity. When Third Strike returned to the championship brackets in 2003, the prize pool was fully swept by Japanese players. First place went to Kenji Obata, second place went to a first-time attendee called Daigo Umehara. Daigo was already a champion and a star in Japan. He won the first ever official Capcom tournament, making him the first Street Fighter Alpha 3 world champion. He was so popular that by the time he rocked his first Evo, he'd already published an autobiography. So Daigo and Justin were already superstars of the scene. But the third round of the Third Strike tournament at Evo 2004 was not necessarily the most hotly anticipated match. Justin and Daigo had never faced off in a competition, and they seemed to have no pre-existing relationship that would make this a particularly juicy battle. But there was a certain amount of tension thanks to the Japan vs. America matchup, and the two champions did have very different fighting strategies. Justin was best known as a defensive player. Depending on who you talk to, that might mean slow, turtling, or in Justin's own words, lame.
I mean, everyone knows me as a lame player.
The key is patience and then ferocity. You can't win a match through defense. At some point, the turtle has to emerge from the shell and start biting. A master of this style won't press until they know they have the advantage. He's considered a master of footsies, which, in fighting game cultures, is not a form of flirting. It generally means finding a way to control the battlefield. Opponents start in neutral and poke at each other, trying to see what strategies they're each gonna use. That back and forth is about finding the advantage. That's footsies. What's Daigo's style? Well, he's considered particularly good at zoning, which is keeping opponents at a distance and pestering them with little attacks until they make a mistake. But that aside, Daigo's playstyle might be no playstyle. And that's according to Justin Wong himself. Justin says, if you watch 5 Daigo matches, it feels like you're watching 5 different players. He's that good. Daigo's playstyle was about frustrating players, and Justin's playstyle was about being patient. So even though they didn't have a rivalry, the audience was excited to see what a face-off between these two would look like.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
Round 1 starts with each player getting teasingly close to each other. Justin was playing as my powerful girlfriend Chun-Li, who has the advantage of a longer reach. It's hard to get close to her, believe me. Daigo as Kin needed to get in close to make the most of his moveset. After failing to tap Justin and getting punished, he has more luck a second time, closing the gap for a few solid hits. Chun-Li's hitbox is small and low when she's crouching, so Justin makes use of that while he's cornered. The moment his super art gauge is filled, Daigo preempts him by unleashing his super art. What Daigo does after gets a cheer. He taunts. In Street Fighter, taunts aren't just knocks against an opponent's morale. For Kin, it increased his attack power for everything except throws. Justin tries to get some space, but Daigo hangs tight, parrying and blocking so he doesn't give up much distance. He low parries a kick into a punch for the KO.
God damn!
Round 2 is not so nice. Footsies are over. It's time for kicksies. Justin comes in hot with a crouching kick and immediately deploys his super art, the Hoyokusen. It's a series of 17 kicks, with the last one launching the opponent upwards. He follows this up with a few jump hits. With well-timed blocks and kicks, Justin keeps Daigo at a distance, meaning he can't lay down his strongest attacks. Daigo trades a few hits but comes out on the other end with just a sliver of health. So he really lays on the heat, hoping to corner and overwhelm Justin before he can land that last hit. But Justin bides his time with blocks until an opening presents itself and finishes him off. Each opponent goes into round 3 with a win. Daigo has a maxed out super gauge and Justin won in the bank. Daigo must close the distance, so Justin pulls back until he goes in for a tap. And just like last round, Justin immediately responds with a super art and a few bonus hits to refill his gauge. A powerful hit landed, Justin once again pulls back, playing to Chun-Li's strengths.
Justin's turtle style.
Before Daigo can land a low kick, Justin interrupts straight into another Hoyokusen. This second super art was probably Justin's fatal mistake, but we'll get to that. Daigo buys a little breathing room with a long-distance attack, the Hadoken, but it's still up to him to close the gap. He sends out another Hadoken and gets knocked back. As his position gets more precarious, he uses the distance-defying Hadoken more, filling up Justin's super gauge. On the same frame, they both go for a crouching medium kick, and they both land the hit. But that leaves Daigo with only the smallest sliver of health left, a pixel-wide slice of desperation that's hard to even see on the screen.
Now on the verge of putting Daigo down.
An audience member encourages Justin to let the time run out. Then whoever had the most health would win. With only 26 seconds left, that would have been a fine strategy. Instead, he goes for the Hoyokusen KO.
Let's go, Justin!
Daigo manages to parry every single hit, following up with a few kicks into his own super art for an insane come-from-behind victory. The crowd goes from waiting for the end to come to shrieking at the overwhelming hype of an impossible move. History has just been made. This is the moment part of Evo Moment 37. let's go over what's really happening. With 31 seconds left, this kick drops Daigo down to basically nothing. But Daigo just went through this. He knows Justin probably expects him to perform the same way as he did last round, rushing in desperation to even the health out. With the timer ticking down, it was up to him to move in and continue the fight. But the moment he sees Justin has a full super gauge, he starts to pull away, actively moving backwards. This backpedaling is bait. In the previous rounds, Justin had deployed his super art as soon as he had a safe opportunity to do so. Once he'd done that twice, Daigo had his number. He would surely go for the third strike. To Justin, this seemed like the moment. Daigo couldn't even block because blocking a super still caused chip damage. And parrying? What? He's gonna parry the whole super art? Justin initiates Chun-Li's Hoyokusen. To get the parry off, Daigo had to hit the input before this flash of light. That required insanely fast reflexes. But he's not reacting. He anticipated Justin's move. A parry against a ground attack has a 10-frame window, so in a 60 frame per second game, that's 1/6 of a second. If he hit one too early, he'd be locked out of parrying. Too late, and he'd take the single hit needed to ensure his loss. Daigo needed to be perfect, which, of course, he was. Daigo even jump parries the final attack, an unnecessary flourish, to better set up the combo of attacks that would keep Justin stunned. Daigo sweeps into victory, and then loses in the final bracket to Kenji Obata for the second year in a row. But second place probably stings less when you've made a place so legendary it's named after you. Among fighting game fans, this is called the Daigo Parry. Folks outside the fighting game realm usually call it Evo Moment 37. Evo and Moment make sense, but where does 37 come from? It's totally made up. This footage, recorded by Capcom's Seth Killian, was pulled as a highlight from the 2004 event and dubbed Evo Moment 37. It was meant to imply that there were 36 other better Evo moments, so if you didn't want to miss anything, you better come to Evo 2005. I don't know if the naming trick worked, but the footage certainly did. People who had never attended could suddenly see the thrilling energy of the tournament battles and get a bad case of Evo FOMO. The footage inspired a lot of future fighting game champions to travel to Evo and try to become legends. Evo had been growing for a while, from 128 local players crammed into an arcade to an international tournament. The 2005 iteration was already set to take place in Las Vegas. The organizers wanted to turn it into a full event, a destination for competitors and fans alike. Before long, it became the biggest annual tournament for the fighting game community. These days, Evo is so big, it just got fully bought by Saudi Arabia, a country known for their human rights abuses. Well, anything beautiful must die someday. Support your local tournaments, folks. These 3 rounds of combat were a crash course on Third Strike's complexity. Players began to reevaluate the subtle mechanics and incredibly expressive sprite work. Now, it's considered one of the best Street Fighter games and one of the best fighting games of all time. But after the initial failure of Street Fighter III, Capcom had shelved the franchise. Arcades were undergoing a mass extinction event, and fighting games were unfashionable. Now, Evo Moment 37 didn't necessarily convince Capcom to dust it off, but it did raise the esteem of fighting games. Evo's popularity proved that there was a community of people who still wanted this genre, and that community was actually growing. Capcom would eventually return to the franchise with Street Fighter IV a whopping 11 years later. These days, Capcom is so big, Saudi Arabia, a country known to use media to launder their extensive human rights abuses, keeps buying stakes in it. If they could buy the rights to button mashing, they'd do that too. Evo Moment 37 clarified the parry's place in fighting games. It made fights more dynamic. As long as a player could parry, a fight was never over till it was over, even when just a sliver of health remained. There was always a chance they could get a second wind and perform a miraculous comeback. Parrying is commonplace in fighting games these days. Hell, it's commonplace in most games with combat. Third Strike didn't originate it, but it certainly made it stylish. It became more prevalent in fighting games in the years after the game's reevaluation. And it's through fighting games that parrying entered the combat roster of action games. The next time you parry a Souls boss, say a silent thank you to Daigo Umehara and Justin Wong. Daigo and Justin were already superstar mega champions, and they both went on to win lots of Evo tournaments. They've even recreated the Daigo parry to the absolute delight of everyone involved.
Daigo Umehara pulling off again. That was awesome.
They're both still active in the community, and they both livestream and have YouTube channels. Justin has made a ton of tutorials to help players get into fighting games, so if Evo Moment 37 inspired you, you should check out his videos. Justin in particular has been a remarkably good sport. A lesser man might have balked at getting so much attention for losing, but he's been open and good-hearted about it. After all, losing happens all the time, even for top-tier competitors. Just ask Daigo about that second-place finish. It's way less often that you get to make history. Evo Moment 37 is undoubtedly a world-altering, history-defining moment for video games. But was the Daigo parry really an impossible move? I mean, it's certainly impossible for me, even though some days it feels like the only way I could get close to my powerful girlfriend Chun-Li. But Daigo certainly knew it was possible. Anecdotally, it seems like this move was more common amongst Japanese players, who were generally using parries to greater advantage. In an interview years later, Daigo said that the move wasn't very hard to do, and that he could pull it off on a regular basis. And in 2021, Justin himself sat down to learn the move. Although it proved frustrating, he was able to get it down in relatively short order despite, in his words, never really learning how to parry. The parry isn't the impressive part of Evo Moment 37. It was all of the moves Daigo took leading up to it. He baited his opponent into a pattern, anticipated the move's arrival, and hit the parry before the super art. It's a masterclass in controlling the playing field. Once that was done, the parry inputs were very rhythmic. As long as he kept to the beat, he had it down pat. According to Daigo, the actual hard part was the psychological battle. It was loud, people were cheering against him, and he knew a single mistake would cost him the tournament. It's about mental fortitude and focus. And those aren't as flashy as reflex skills, but they're probably more important. The combination of expertise, skill, and reflexes are what makes a true champion. And it's the right circumstances that turn a moment into history.
Third strike, y'all, a straight fighter 3.